Welcome back. We're watching the Brand Equity Cannes Lions 2014 special with me, Sonali Krishna. Now he's back as the #1 player in the communication space after the Publicis Omnicom breakup, and boy, is he a happy man or what? I caught up with WPP's Martin Sorrell to discuss how consolidation in this space will pan out in the future, how new structures are emanating from large multinationals and what impact that's going to have, and how the digital giants are upping their game and looking to cannibalize the agency business. You've got to hear this one. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin.
Pleasure, as always.
Pleasure once again. I wanted to ask you, do you think players such as yourselves are competitors to Facebook, Twitter's,
Well, they're
BuzzFeed?
frenemies. But, you know, Google is going through a very interesting phase. It's hired a very senior Procter & Gamble executive. It's hired a very senior L'Oreal executive who had Colgate experience. It's hired a very senior Unilever executive who had MTV experience. It's hired a very senior GSK executive who had Procter experience. So it's bringing in a lot of packaged goods clients of ours, supposedly, they say, to work with agencies and those clients. Now, there's going to be a lot of people bumping into one another, and I think they have to clarify that. In the old days, these would be people, you'd term these people as ad salespeople. In other words, but they're clearly not that in this case. So it's going to be, this is another twist. Now, Google had 47% margins, I think last time I checked. Facebook 35%, which is 2 times, more than 2 times, and more than 3 times our margin.
Sure, yeah.
And so this is what they quote unquote show because they make investments there. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic, and Google now is a $400 billion company. It's the most valuable company on the planet because you strip out the cash out of Apple, I think it would have greater value. But you know, when I go to India, our people tell me, Martin, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about.
In India, they tell you that?
Yeah, and I say why? They say because Google goes direct to our clients. Now, the people at Google, the very senior people, have said to me, there is no way that should happen. And if it is happening, you should let us know and we'll make sure that it doesn't happen, that they want to have a constructive partnership with us.
I want to talk about structures within organizations, and, you know, as you've touched upon it a little bit, saying that, you know, regional structures are going to soon become redundant. Your perspective on why that's going to happen, and is the agency going to mirror that model?
With a number of major clients, sort of 3 things happening. Global is becoming more important, but at the same time, clients are saying, I want an agile, nimble center. I don't want to become overly bureaucratic. Locally, e.g. in India, I want to understand more about what's happening in India, and if, you know, WPP operates in 110 countries. Some companies like Coca-Cola operate in 220 countries. I didn't think there were 220 countries, but they operate there. How is it possible, just take 110, half the number of Coca-Cola, how is it possible to know what goes on in India? Who are the best people? What are the best acquisitions? Who are the clients of the future that we should be working with? Not the regional or multinational clients, but local. So you have the local. So Ranjan Kapoor is our answer in an Indian context. From a global context, we have our client leaders, 41 of them, managing $6 billion of revenue out of a total of $18 billion last year, probably a little bit more, 35,000 people working on those accounts, trying to get some coherence. At the regional level, we see pressure. In other words, clients are questioning whether regional adds significant value. Because what they say is, and you know, I've heard this in the context of GE, information comes down, or directives come down, and regional blocks. Stuff comes up, and from national, it blocks. So the regional has the power to say no, but not the power to say yes.
Sure.
And there's pressure on cost. The other thing is which is really interesting. If you take Brazil out of Latin America region, if you take Russia out of Central and Eastern Europe and EMEA, if you take India and China out of Asia and have them as direct reports, which I believe you should do, because how can you treat India with 1.2 billion people and the same as Portugal? Right? You have them as direct reports. That immediately makes the regions more manageable. And I think that's the way life is going. And it's helped by technology. So instead of you having an organizational span, McKinsey used to say, I think, the maximum organizational span should be 12 or 13 direct reports. Now it can be more. And I think that's what you're starting to see. And it fits with the emphasis on cost. It's taxing because it means people have to work harder. But I think ultimately it means that we can save significant amounts of money on that regional structure because we don't have to match off it against clients. We only have it because we match off against clients and because we need a span of control as well. And we'll invest that money in better creative product and better distribution.
Thank you so much for joining us, Martin. Truly a pleasure once again to be chatting with you.
Glad to be here yet again.
Now, Cannes Lions has a history of spectacular sessions and speakers, and this year was no different. Or maybe it was a whole lot of celebrities graced the festival this year. Well, we bring you the best sessions that took the festival by storm.
As creatives, it's a hard thing to push, you know, to make something that you're truly excited about, especially if you've written 100 different concepts and they keep getting shut down. But I mean, I think if there's any clients in the room, I think that, you know, be willing to get fired on a good idea. You know, that's like, I think that's what the world needs. And
the idea behind the New York City rejection line was if someone was hitting on you and they wouldn't take no for an answer, you could give them your number. And the number was actually an automated rejection message. And so you would call and it would say, the person who gave you this number doesn't actually want to see you again. You can press 1 to speak to a comfort specialist. You can press 2 to hear a sad poem written by a kindred spirit. Or you can press 3 to cling to the unrealistic hope a relationship still possible. And what we found was that people would listen to it and then they would tell all their friends about it. There was something new about that because you could reach a huge audience for the first time by people sharing.
It'd be nice if I went to my doctor and there was something that was on my wrist, some of you probably wear it, and track how many steps you take every day or something like that. Why wouldn't that thing just be able to tell my temperature all the time, as opposed to have to stick things in strange parts of my anatomy and figure out what my temperature is? Why wouldn't that thing just be able to figure out my temperature all the time? And I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, wow, I've been looking at your temperature graph for the last 2 weeks, and I saw a blip twice. And were you feeling okay? Were you sick? Were you not sick? Now, that'd be nice data to have, right?
When a little boy leads, he's a leader. There's no negative term associated with it. The word bossy is used 4 times more for girls than boys. That means that starting on the playground, we start telling girls not to lead. So this weekend, when you see a little girl called bossy, and you will, you walk up to those people, even if they're her parents, with a big smile, and you say, that little girl's not bossy. That little girl has executive leadership skills.
We had a big fight over the parenthesis, which is the branding of red. He said, we're going to do red. Yes, we're going to do it, but we're not having the parenthesis. And that's going to be a problem, Steve, because that's the thing that unites all the companies. That's our branding thing. Can't do it. And so we actually had a bit of a fight about this. And I was just about to tell him to stick the phone up his ass. And this is before iPhone. And so I said, Steve, shall we sleep on it? And he said, okay. And I wrote him this kind of long email. And he wrote back the next day, he called back the next day, and he said, okay, we're going to do the parenthesis for you. We're going to do the parenthesis, but never in an Apple store. And to this day, you will never see the parenthesis in an Apple store.
It's been an overwhelming 10 days in the south of France, and we hope you enjoyed watching the shows as much as we enjoyed working through it. Do take the time and drop us a line at brandequity@etnow.tv, or alternatively log on to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/brandequity, to give us your feedback on our special coverage. On that note, it's time to bid you goodbye until next week. Merci beaucoup.